Hello, welcome to Bentley's Backwoods Bushcraft, and this is Richard and Violet. Violet, my Violet. So anyway, today I am going to show you my altar, my main altar in my front room, and kind of just go through and show it to you and explain a little bit of why I have things where they are and why they're there in the first place. Yes. Do you want to see? Do you want to see? Huh? Alright, so let's get on that. Alrighty, firstly, I'm just going to quickly start here with the left. Just kind of slowly go here to the right. There we go. And then back to the center, and that's my basic front room altar. And now let me get a little bit closer with some of these items and show you exactly what they are and why I have them where they are. Alrighty, this is the left side of my altar, which is the goddess side of my altar. And I will just start, let me kind of tighten this up just a tad bit here. I'll start here with my wand. Now, some of you who watch my videos actually seen me collecting and working on two wands. One of them I gave away to a very close YouTube witchy friend, and this one I kept for myself. So my wand sits at the very front part of my goddess side of the altar. This here is a black walnut. Now, I live in Kokomo, Indiana. Kokomo in the native tongue means black walnut. Black walnuts are extremely popular around here, and I have a very intense and high appreciation for black walnut. And being a nut, this also represents a womb, so goddess. And I did lacquer this over. If you can see, it is kind of shiny. I did let it sit and dry out, and then once it dried out, I did put a coat of lacquer over top of it. And I have a little lid sitting right here that I sit it on. And the main reason I do that is because I don't want, for some reason, that lacquer to come off and get onto my altar. When I first set it there, I was a little afraid that the lacquer wasn't quite dry. So that's why I set it there, and I just leave it there. But this is a nut, and a nut represents, to me, it represents the womb, which is goddess. Goddess candle. I have a white candle here that I use to represent the goddess. I do have a scrying mirror in the back here that I did make. If you can see the scrying mirror. And I put that on my left side. And I do plan on actually working on a video showing you how to make a scrying mirror. And hopefully I'll get that done here soon. Now, I made this candle. I'm starting to make these little candles here. If you watched my video on making my poppet, once I made my poppet, I have 4 or 5 of these little cookie cutters. Oh, pardon me, that was me. Little cookie cutters, and I decided it might make a really cool candle thing. So I made some candles. I only had green candles and red candles, so that's what I made, green and red. The green I'm representing as the goddess, and I know it's not huge, but it doesn't have to be. So I have a little goddess candle sitting there. And again, another little goddess candle sitting. I love candles. Now this rock, well, I made this and cut it out, a little symbol of the goddess. And I found this rock in the water, actually. And I love this rock, and it called to me when I first seen it. I picked it up, and I use this also to represent the goddess. And I don't think I ever really noticed it before, but there's a little etching right there. It looks like the beginnings of a pinnacle. I don't know. Anyway, so that represents goddess for me. So I leave that on my goddess side. This I use as my cup, my chalice, and it's nothing more than just a goblet, just a regular glass cup. And I actually purchased this at the Dollar Tree. So a lot of my stuff I really try to find from nature. It's important to me to try to get as much from nature as possible. So we move just a slight bit over here. Let me move the camera a slightly bit. Alrighty, so this, I have to say, was an interesting find for me. This I use as my cauldron. And it comes with this nice little stand that has a little tea light candle holder in the bottom, and then this sits on top. Then I've got the lid there. I use that as my cauldron. I found that at a junk shop. I think maybe I paid $1 or $2 for it, but whatever I paid for it, I was happy to do. So I use that as my cauldron. Now here in the back, I have a bunch of feathers. These are geese feathers, and I've bundled them slightly in a little bundle here. Represents air, and I set that there. So now we're going to move in the middle of my altar. All right, the middle of my altar, the very back, is a bell. Now I purchased this bell at the Dollar Tree. It had something on. I think it was a Christmas bell. To be totally honest, I think I got it during Christmas time. But it had a bunch of, like, I don't know, Santa Clauses or snowmen or something on it. I can't remember what it was. But if you can see, it's discolored slightly in certain areas. I actually just took some sandpaper and sanded the paint off of it. And I love bells. So that sits in the very back of the center of my altar. Now, as you can see, this rock here, and I'm not going to lift it up, it's a pretty hefty rock. Again, I found it by the water's edge, and I use it as my altar rock. I have not placed a pinnacle upon it yet, but I've always considered doing it. At one point, and I've had this rock since the beginning. To be totally honest, this rock here, since I'm going to tell a little bit of a story here. I'll zoom in just a little bit here. This rock here was the very first altar I ever had in the mid-90s. This rock here I found at my local reservoir, which is a place that I still go to this day. But this rock was what I found to actually be my very first altar, and I have kept this since the very beginning, and I still use this to this day, and I believe that I will keep this for my entire life, and I hope that I'm able to pass this on to the next generation of Wiccans or pagans or whatever they decide, witches, whatever they decide to be calling themselves at that point. Hopefully I will have somebody to pass this on to. So yes, this right here is very, very, very sacred to me, and is the oldest, honestly, the oldest thing I think that I still have from the very beginnings. This was my actual very first altar. So there we go, we said that. Now, I have 4 seashells placed the north, the south, the east, and the west. And within each is the element that it represents, something that represents the element. This one is fire, and this is a piece of flint. Very, very primitive, fire-oriented element, the flint. Over here is water, and I just have, as you can see, there you go, there's water in there. And I live out in the country, and we have a well, so my water comes directly from the earth in that well, so that also is a very wonderful thing for me. Up here in the north, this is dirt, and this is actual dirt from my yard. So this is my dirt, my earth. And then over here we have air, and I symbolize, of course, the air with a very common symbolization is a feather. And in the center I have a small stone, and on that small stone I have salt. And as I said, I don't have an actual pinnacle, and I could put a pinnacle on this little stone, which I probably should do here soon. I don't know. I'll think about it. But yeah, in the very center of the elements is a small stone that contains a little bit of salt. So now we will move further to the right, and we will move into the God side of my altar. Alrighty, so now we were going to work on the God side of my altar. Again, I have this green candle, which on this side I represent as God, the God. I see green both as God and Goddess. And the cool thing about our religion is that anything can be anything depending on what you want it to be. We don't have to adhere to somebody else's beliefs or opinions. Here is a God candle, which is gold. The white or silver on the left hand side for Goddess, and the gold on the right hand side for the God. Again, the red candle that I made represents the God. And again, it's not a huge candle, but it doesn't have to be. Here in the center here is this nice round rock, and this just felt like it represented the God to me for some reason. I can tell you why, honestly. Generally, something this shape would kind of, for me, if it was set this way, it would kind of feel or represent Goddess in some ways, because it looks kind of like an egg, and that would represent Goddess. And it also has somewhat of a shape of Goddess. But when I first seen it and picked it up, it was more directed like this, and I saw it more as an axe. And to be totally honest, when I first found this, I used this as a pestle. I was grinding herbs and things with it when I first originally found it. That was what I used it for. I used it to grind herbs and things with, and for some reason one day it just kind of hit me. This actually kind of feels like a rock that would represent the God. So that's what it became. So it sits here. Now, let me grab these antler here. I live in Indiana, and we have a lot of deer here. And sometimes you get hunters that kill deer, sometimes you don't. These weren't killed by a hunter, actually. This deer was found out in the middle of a field, dead. It was not shot. It just died. I don't know, maybe the weather got to it, or maybe it was sick. No idea why it had passed. But it was found out in the field, and these antlers were taken off by the person who found it, and then they were given to me as a gift. So I represent those with God, of course, and they sit there. Okay, this athame, my knife. This here was given to me by a fellow YouTuber, and he made this out of a railroad tie. Or I'm sorry, a railroad spike. Yes, he made this out of a railroad spike. And he gave this to me. And when I received it, extremely enthusiastic. And it just kind of felt at the time it was going to be my Athame, and it's remained my Athame. So that is the story behind that. 2 more items to work with. This here, and some of you probably already know what this is. You could say, oh, this is a bone. It's just a bone. Well, with the god represents male, what better to represent the god than a male member? This is a raccoon. I believe it's called a baculum. I think that's what it's called. I could be mistaken, but this is a raccoon penis. So let's just say that this is a raccoon penis. And there's nothing better, in my opinion, to represent the male form than an actual penis. Anyway, you know, how better can you represent male? So next, let's look at this object right up here. There we go. Now, this is a wonderful Book of Shadows that was given to me by Blonde Lady Productions. And I have done a video thanking her for that. And if you haven't seen that, I encourage you to go look. But she made this wonderful boss for me, and it sits prominently on my main front room altar. Behind it is my working boss, my Book of Shadows, and within it is a little bit of stuff. I don't have a massive amount of stuff in there. I don't always tend to reuse rituals and spells and things to that nature if I do them. I tend to like to be unique and redo things each time, but I do keep information in there that I do plan on using or believe that I will probably use more than once. So I do try to keep a record of that, but I am not a huge record keeper when it comes to a lot of stuff like that. Alrighty, so that is a basic look at my altar. Now, what I want to emphasize, and I want to make sure everybody understands this, okay? Just because my altar looks like this doesn't mean your altar has to look like this. If you are pagan in some way, shape, or form, and you create an altar, it can look and be anything that you want. There are no rules, there are no regulations as to it has to be this way or it has to be that way. The beauty, well, one of the beauties of our belief system is that we don't have to abide by other people's beliefs. We can have our own beliefs. So you set up your altar in any fashion that you desire, that makes you comfortable, that makes you happy, or don't set up an altar. Absolutely don't have to have one. There's no reason, there's nothing that says that you have to have one.